My parents kicked me out, saying, "Your cousin needs that internship more, you'll ruin his chances if you compete." So I gave it up and left, but 2 months later, they called in a panic when he got fired and my name was announced as CEO's pick. I'm Delia, and I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania. I come from a family that's big on image and even bigger on hierarchy. I was the quiet achiever, straight A student, scholarship kid, worked part-time all through college, graduated from Carnegie Mellon with honors. My cousin Logan, on the other hand, was the one they bragged about at dinner parties. Even after he dropped out of Columbia because he wasn't aligned with their values, he somehow became even more of a family hero. Charming, charismatic, and full of ideas, but no follow-through. I had applied for a highly competitive internship at Arctics Global, a Boston-based tech company that had become one of the hottest players in the analytics and AI space. It wasn't just another internship, it was the internship. 5 spots, over 4,000 applicants. I was shortlisted. I had worked for that moment for years. What I didn't know at the time was that Logan had applied too, on a whim. And apparently, his parents and mine had been talking behind my back. Comparing. Plotting. Aligning their narratives. When my parents asked me not to go, they framed it like a sacrifice I should want to make. That it was noble. That Logan just needed a break and I would have many chances ahead. The air that night felt heavy, like it always did when I was expected to surrender for the sake of family harmony. But this wasn't like being asked to skip dessert or give up my room for guests over the holidays. This was my future. Still, I didn't argue. I went upstairs, packed a small bag, and left a note. If he needs it more, I'll make space. I hope you're proud of your choice. Delia. I caught the late Greyhound to Pittsburgh and stayed on my old roommate's couch for a few days. Zaria offered me a place longer term, but I knew I had to stand on my own. I pulled every favor I could and eventually found a tiny sublet in Boston, 4 walls, a mattress on the floor, and a rickety desk. It was enough. I spent every day applying to jobs. Anything remotely related to data science or analytics. Most deadlines had passed. I was angry and numb, but I kept my head down. I didn't reach out to anyone. I didn't tell my story. I just worked. Then one day, about 3 weeks into my new life, I got a message on LinkedIn from a woman named Tanya who worked at Arctics. She'd heard my name from someone at a nonprofit where I'd done some volunteer analytics work. She asked if I was still interested in working in tech. I told her yes. She set up a meeting with Noelle Farrow, the CEO herself. I couldn't believe it at first. I thought it was a mistake. But when I walked into the office, wearing borrowed heels and a thrift store blazer, I knew it was real. Noelle didn't waste time. I've seen enough candidates to know who's the real deal, she said. Your story reached me. You know how to work hard. You've built yourself from the ground up. That's the kind of person I want on my team. She offered me a rotating fellowship spot, which was technically above the internship track. It was meant for future leaders. And it came with direct mentorship from senior execs, including her. I accepted without hesitation. 2 months after I left home, while I was deep in my first rotation, Logan was fired. Not just let go quietly, fired for cause. He had been skipping assignments, showing up late, arguing with managers. He even tried to present someone else's work as his own during a group presentation. HR didn't waste time. He was out. I didn't hear from my family until the day my promotion was announced during a company-wide town hall. Noelle mentioned me by name. We're proud to have Delia Morton as our newest development track fellow. Expect to see her leading teams very soon. That night, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. My mom texted first, "Sweetheart, can we please talk? We're so proud of you. This is all so unexpected." Then a missed call from my dad. Then my aunt, Logan's mom. Even Logan himself texted something vague and manipulative like, "Hey, maybe we should catch up soon? No hard feelings, right?" I didn't answer. A week later, I finally picked up when my parents called. They tried to act casual at first, asking how I was, pretending the last 2 months hadn't happened. I asked them directly, would you have called if Logan hadn't been fired? Silence. Then my mom said quietly, we just want to fix this. We made a mistake. We thought we were helping. No apology. Just a reroute. As if the narrative could be rewritten now that I was successful. I didn't say much on the call. Just listened. My mom did most of the talking. My dad stayed quiet, which was typical. He only ever found his voice when it was time to reinforce her opinions. They tiptoed around the issue like it might shatter on impact if spoken out loud. We just didn't know how far you'd come, my mom kept saying. As if that justified anything. What struck me most was how none of it felt like guilt. Not really. It was regret, but not for how they'd treated me. Regret that their bet on Logan hadn't paid off. That they'd backed the wrong horse. That's what stung the most. They asked if I'd come home for the weekend. Just for dinner. Nothing heavy, we promise. Just a family thing. I told them I'd think about it. I didn't. I hung up, tossed my phone on the couch, and stared at the ceiling until it got dark. In the weeks that followed, I kept my focus on work. The rotation program was demanding. I was being mentored by senior analysts and had my own small team for a mid-quarter strategy sprint. It was a lot, but I thrived in it. It was the first time in my life I felt like my potential was seen for what it was, not something to be quieted down or set aside so someone else could shine. And yet, even as I buried myself in spreadsheets, models, and leadership meetings, the texts from home didn't stop. My mom sent pictures of the dog. My dad forwarded me an article about women in tech with the note, thought of you, so proud. My aunt sent me a passive-aggressive message, we all make mistakes. Some of us just don't get as many chances to fix them. That one I deleted without responding. I wasn't sure what they wanted from me, honestly. Forgiveness? Recognition? A way to write themselves back into my success story? But what do you do when the people who raised you made it clear that your ambition was disposable? That their loyalty was conditional on how well your choices aligned with their preference for someone else? It's a strange thing, grief without death. That's what it felt like. Mourning parents who were still alive and texting me emojis like nothing happened. And Logan. He started circling again, too. First it was an awkward congrats. Looks like you're slaughter it. Then, about a week later, a DM asking if I had time to catch up when he was in Boston. Apparently, he had a few startup ideas he wanted to run by me. I didn't reply. I wanted to scream, to shake him and ask if he even understood the weight of what he'd done, or the role he played. But I knew it wouldn't make a difference. Logan was always surrounded by people cleaning up his messes. His talent wasn't intelligence or work ethic, it was in convincing others that he was one small opportunity away from brilliance. And now that Arctics had closed the door on him, he was trying to pry open mine. A month after the promotion announcement, I finally agreed to meet my parents in person. Not because I missed them, exactly, but because I needed to see if there was anything real left between us. If there was even the possibility of rebuilding something honest. We met at a cafe in downtown Erie. Public, neutral ground. They looked older. Not physically, just smaller somehow. Less certain. My mom opened with a long sigh and said, we didn't come to make excuses. We want to understand how we lost you. I sat there for a long moment, stirring coffee I wasn't going to drink. You didn't lose me, I said. You traded me. Their faces tightened. You made a decision, I continued. You decided someone else's potential mattered more than mine. And when I walked away, you let me go. My dad started to say something, but I held up my hand. You don't get to rewrite that. My mom nodded, slowly. She looked like she wanted to argue, but didn't have the energy for it. Or maybe the self-awareness to know she shouldn't. Then she asked the question I'd been dreading. Is there a way back? For us? I didn't answer right away. I genuinely didn't know. What followed was a strange stretch of weeks where I didn't say no, but I didn't say yes either. I kept some distance. I didn't block their numbers. I didn't return home. I didn't share details of my life. Instead, I focused on creating new routines. I started mentoring high school girls interested in tech. I joined a local board for a nonprofit that supported first-gen college students. I started going to therapy. I had to relearn how to speak about myself without apology. For so long, I'd conditioned myself to shrink. To make room. To step back so others, usually men, usually family, could take center stage. Unlearning that took time. And the more I did, the more I realized how much I'd lost to that mindset. Not just opportunities, but confidence, trust, joy. Logan, meanwhile, was still scrambling. A mutual friend told me he was trying to spin his firing into a strategic pivot and looking for angel investors for a vague, blockchain-adjacent platform that no one could explain. Classic. I never responded to his messages. I don't think I ever will. A few months after that cafe meeting with my parents, things settled into a quiet, unresolved state. We didn't fight, we didn't reconcile, we just hovered in this gray area. They would text occasionally, usually something light. Birthday wishes. A forwarded meme. The kind of surface-level communication you might have with an old coworker. And I didn't push it either. I wasn't angry the way I thought I'd be. Just tired. Tired of being the only one who ever had to justify wanting something for herself. Tired of being told I was strong enough to sacrifice my future for someone else's comfort. So I kept the boundary. It wasn't a wall, more like a glass partition. They could see in, but they couldn't reach me unless I decided to open the door. And for now, I didn't. Work became my safe space. I poured myself into it, not because I was trying to prove anything anymore, but because I loved it. I liked the structure. The clarity. When I worked hard, the outcomes matched the effort. No favoritism. No politics disguised as family obligations. Just results. My second rotation placed me under a VP named Sabrina who didn't care where you came from as long as you delivered. She gave me a product launch to lead. A real one. Not a shadow project. And when I nailed it, she pulled me aside and said, "Keep this up, and in 2 years, you'll be in my seat." I believed her. It felt good, hearing someone say I belonged somewhere without the unspoken caveat of as long as someone else doesn't need it more. Still, in the quiet moments, late at night, brushing my teeth, or when I'd get a memory notification from years ago, I'd think about how close I came to giving all of this up. And how, for a moment, I actually did. One night, I found myself scrolling through old texts from Logan, just out of curiosity. There was one from over a year ago, right after my parents had first told me to back out of the internship. It read, "If you sit this one out, I won't forget it. Seriously. You'd be doing me a massive solid." It was so casual. So flippant. Like I was doing him a favor by throwing my career into the ocean. I never replied. That night, I archived our entire thread. Not deleted, just buried. I didn't want to erase what happened. I wanted it where I could find it if I ever started doubting myself again. By early spring, I got a promotion. It wasn't massive in title, but it came with a team and my own project cycle. I had a small office now, a badge with a different color stripe, and regular sit-downs with Noelle. She wasn't warm exactly, but she respected me. And I respected her. When I called Zaria to tell her, she screamed so loudly I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "This is insane," she said. "Do your parents even know?" "I don't think they know half of what I'm doing," I replied. "And I kind of want to keep it that way." She paused. "That makes sense. But doesn't it also kind of hurt?" It did. But I'd stopped waiting for that part to go away. I'd learned that some pain doesn't dissolve. It just becomes part of the background noise of your life. Like a neighbor's dog that barks all night. You don't love it, but you learn to sleep through it. Around that time, my mom invited me to a small family brunch. Just her, my dad, and my aunt and uncle. Logan wouldn't be there, she promised. Just a low-pressure thing. I told her I'd think about it, but didn't go. Something about being in the same room as people who had watched me walk out the door without a fight made my stomach turn. It wasn't bitterness, it was self-protection. I didn't want to be polite for their comfort. Not yet. That decision sparked a different kind of response. My mom stopped sending texts. My dad didn't forward articles anymore. The silence wasn't loud, it was empty. But that emptiness? I found I preferred it to the forced familiarity. It gave me space to keep healing. Then, in late April, I got a letter in the mail. Not an email. A real envelope, handwritten, no return address. It was from my aunt, Logan's mother. The handwriting was shaky, and the letter rambled. She wrote about how proud she was of both me and Logan, how family goes through phases, and how it's important not to let resentment grow where love used to be. I sat on the floor of my apartment holding that letter for a long time. Not because it changed anything, but because it confirmed something I'd suspected for a while: they still didn't get it. None of them did. They thought this was about a single decision. About Logan's internship. About one opportunity one gave up and then somehow got back in another form. But it wasn't. It was about trust. About knowing your own parents will stand behind you, not just when it's easy, but when it's uncomfortable. About not being used as a pawn in someone else's redemption arc. They had pulled the thread, and the whole fabric unraveled. And now, months later, they were trying to stitch it back up with letters and brunch invites and awkward silences that pretended nothing had torn in the first place. And I wasn't angry. I was just done pretending the fabric hadn't changed shape. A few months after receiving that letter from my aunt, I found myself back in Pittsburgh for a tech conference. Arctics was sponsoring a few panels, and I'd been invited to speak about data accessibility and equity, two things that had become very personal to me. It felt surreal. I had my own name tag, my own seat on stage, my own time slot. Afterward, I lingered in the lobby, sipping lukewarm coffee and chatting with a few young women who came up to thank me for my talk. They reminded me of myself 3 years ago, quiet, eager, smart, and unsure if they belonged. I told them the truth: you do. Whether or not anyone else believes it yet. That moment meant more to me than any applause. But the next day, that's when everything started to shift. I got a call from Noelle. "We're acquiring a startup," she said. "They're small, messy, but the IP is strong. We need someone to go in, stabilize the internal ops, and prep them for integration." She paused. "I want you to lead it." The startup was based in Erie. That Erie. My hometown. I didn't answer right away. "I know it's personal," she added. "If you'd rather not, no," I said. "I'll do it." Because this was the moment. The idea of returning to that city not in shame or silence, but as a leader, as someone they couldn't ignore or minimize anymore, it hit something deep in me. This wasn't about rubbing anything in anyone's face. It was about rewriting the story. Not their version. Mine. I moved into a short-term rental near the lake and started the process. The startup was chaotic but salvageable. A few dozen employees, mostly young, scrappy coders who hadn't seen a real organizational chart in months. I brought order, introduced scalable workflows, retained the right people, and handled the layoffs with empathy. The job was hard, but it was fair. And people respected me. Within 2 months, we were nearly ready to fully onboard under the Arctic's umbrella. And that's when I found out Logan had applied for a job there. Not just any job, a mid-level product consultant role on the team I now led. Apparently, he'd heard the startup was hiring again and saw it as a fresh start. HR forwarded me his resume, along with a question: "Do you know him personally?" He mentioned being related to you. I read the email 3 times. Then I sat back in my chair and smiled. Not a smug smile. Not a cruel one. Just, full circle. I didn't reject him immediately. Instead, I asked to schedule an interview with me personally. I wanted to look him in the eye. When he walked in, he was dressed too casually, clearly banking on charm. His smile faltered a little when he saw me behind the desk. "Delia," he said, like it was a joke we were both in on. "Wow. Full boss mode, huh?" I didn't smile. I gestured for him to sit. "Let's talk about your resume." We went through it point by point. I asked him to explain projects he couldn't recall. Asked him to walk me through strategies that didn't make sense. His confidence began to crack, just slightly. And then I asked him, "Why do you want this job?" He hesitated. "Honestly? I just need a place to start fresh. I know I've made mistakes, but I've got good instincts. I just need someone to take a chance on me." I nodded slowly. "Logan, here's the thing," I said. "This role requires someone who listens. Who takes responsibility. Who works when no one is watching. That's not you." His eyes shifted. "Delia, come on. Don't make this personal." "I'm not," I said, evenly. "I've made my decision based on your qualifications. And from what I've seen here, and what I know from before, you're not qualified." He opened his mouth to argue, but I stood up. "This interview is over. HR will follow up." He left, slower than he'd entered. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small in his presence. I felt grounded. Not above him. Just, beyond him. The fallout from that moment rippled quietly through the family. Word got around that I'd turned him down. My mom called the next day, not to ask why, but to ask how I could. "He's going through a rough patch," she said. "This could have helped him get back on track." I was tired of explaining. So I just said, "You told me once he needed it more. I believed you. But now I need something. I need to stop setting myself on fire to keep him warm." There was a long silence. Then she said, "I guess we don't know each other anymore." And for once, that felt okay. In the months that followed, I wrapped up the transition project. Arctics absorbed the startup and offered me a permanent VP role back in Boston. I accepted. On my last day in Erie, I took a walk near the lake, where I used to go in high school when I needed to think. I sat on a bench, watching the water, thinking about everything I had lost, and everything I had reclaimed. Not through screaming. Not through revenge that burned everything down. But through patience. Through power. Through proving, silently and steadily, that I never needed anyone to make room for me. I'd built my own. And now, I choose who gets a seat at my table.